Number one, as the comms director, I'll never understand the weight that our lead pastor carries, ever. No matter how many emails I think I have to do or print, I'll never understand the weight. So I think number one, holding that with grace and understanding I don't understand what he's carrying. And so my job is to make his load lighter, not make it heavier. And so how do I make his load lighter is I'm thinking through the things that maybe he hasn't thought of. I don't think there's many pastors who, if they do things last minute, it's not because they're trying to hurt their comms director. It's just they were doing so many other things and finally got the opportunity to go, oh, we could do this. And so as a leader, I'm always trying to think ahead for my pastor and get stuff in front of him before he has to think of it.
Hey, this is season 3, episode 37 of the Missional Marketing Podcast. My name is Bart Blair. It is my privilege to welcome you to another episode of our show. We produce this podcast to help your church grow by leveraging digital marketing and effective communications. And if you're new to the show, we want to welcome you as you have tuned in. It seems like, as I look at our download numbers, that we have new people jumping into the show every single week. And if you are one of those new people and you haven't yet subscribed wherever you're listening to the show, make sure that you do that so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you both subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified about future episodes that are released. And hey, while you're on the YouTube channel, would you just scroll down there and hit that little thumbs up button? That'll let us know and let other people know that you're enjoying the podcast. We also, on our YouTube channel, post a question at the top of the comments in every episode. And it's really just an idea or concept to get a conversation started. So if you're watching on the YouTube channel and you want to comment, you want to answer the question there, let's have some conversation. So jump in there and answer the question or leave your own comments. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what you're thinking as you listen to each episode. Today's guest is one that I'm really excited to introduce you to. There's a slight chance that you know who this person is. Honestly, I didn't. A guest that was referred to us by our friend Katie Allred. And anytime that Katie Allred makes a recommendation, we're going to take that one seriously. And it took me quite a while to actually get this one scheduled because at the time that I was getting it scheduled, our guest was in transition, beginning a new position at a new church, and she was moving across the country. And our guest's name today is Sallie Guillory, and she has just taken a position as the communications director at a little church out on the West Coast that you might have heard of called Saddleback. That's right. Sallie is the new communications director at Saddleback. And man, this conversation was just phenomenal. I honestly didn't know what to expect, but I was just blown away by her wisdom, her insight, her creativity. Just her road into ministry is a very unique one. And I just think you're really going to get a lot out of this conversation. Now, I do need to apologize in advance for the quality of my audio. I don't know what happened here, but my audio on the recording in the conversation is really terrible. We've just recently switched to using a new platform for recording our podcast. I'm not going to name it, but we're going to give it a couple more tries. But this is like the second or third time that this has happened, and it's not good. So I apologize that my audio is terrible. Hopefully you will stick with the conversation because Sallie's audio is just fine, and she's the one that you really want to hear from in this episode. So apologies, bear with us. And there's enough of that. So thanks again for tuning in to the podcast. If you or someone from your church would like to connect with Jason or me at Missional Marketing to talk about your church's digital marketing and outreach strategies, you can click over to our website, missionalmarketing.com, hit the contact button, and you can schedule an appointment to meet with one of us or one of our highly capable team members. We appreciate you tuning in. And without any further delay, here's my recent conversation with Sallie Guillory. Hey, Sallie, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Really glad to have you as a guest on our podcast.
Hey, Bart, I'm glad to be here with you today.
Okay. Now, we were just talking about pronunciation of names, and you just pronounced my name. And clearly, you sound like you're from Louisiana because you pronounce my name like a Louisiana person would pronounce my name. You probably didn't even hear it, did you? Do you
hear it? I'm immune.
No? You're immune. All right. Well, those of you who are listening to the podcast this week or watching the podcast on our YouTube channel, I've got Sallie Guillory here as a guest on the show. And Sallie and I were just Sallie. I just combined them. See, it's getting worse by the moment. It
happens all the time.
Sallie, I just explained to her that she has an accent that betrays her origins, and she is from the South, from Louisiana, but there's much more to her story than simply being a person from South Louisiana, Lafayette. That's the way I say it. I'm sure she's going to say it differently because they say it differently in Louisiana. Sallie, tell us a little bit of your story and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, Bart. I am originally from Louisiana, born and raised Cajun through and through. So yes, I can cook a gumbo, I can cook etouffee, all of those things. So grew up in South Louisiana and grew up Episcopal church, dabbled in Catholic a little bit. You know, our family went to church every week, but I wouldn't really say kind of had a relationship with God. And so went to college and started coaching high school basketball while I was in college and kind of fell in love with that and changed my major to become a teacher and coach. And in the process, met some great people who began discipling me and really kind of got me plugged into a church where I kind of came into a real relationship with Jesus. And ever since then, it's kind of like before those were my BC days and here before Christ. And so after that, got saved and started kind of just getting super involved in our church and continued coaching. And when I graduated college, began even teaching. I taught world geography a little bit, coached high school basketball, and then had some amazing opportunities to begin coaching in college. So I coached at McNeese State University in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and then moved on to my alma mater, which is the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns, who just played the NCAA tournament. Yeah. But I had an opportunity to do that, got to coach in 2 NCAA tournaments there, had some really, really good players who were, amazingly, a lot of the majority of our team was from Louisiana. And then in 2015, really felt like the Lord was kind of just changing my heart a little bit and stirring up some ministry things inside of me. And as I began to pray and process with my pastors and small group leaders and people that were kind of influencing me, really felt the call to get into full-time ministry. And so joined the staff at our church where I was saved in. My spiritual father, guy who led me to the Lord, was our pastor, and he hired me on to do some athletic ministry. And kind of like I'm sure many people listening to this can relate, that led to a few months later, the youth pastor quit. So he comes to our team and says, well, you guys are already working with students, so why don't you take over the youth? So we did that. And then started working with the college ministry, did kind of a bunch of different things, outreach. And then he came to me with another assignment and says, hey, we'd love for you to take over this kind of creative communications team. And I was like, I've never done anything like this. But just kind of continued to say yes to just anything God was kind of putting in front of me. And that led to me kind of working on the team there, leading up the creative communications team at our church in Louisiana. And then in 2020, one of our pastors there got a call to go be a senior pastor at Times Square Church in New York City. And we began praying through that. And I ended up going with him there, did that for a few years, had a great time, went through the pandemic in New York City. So that was an experience. And then began kind of just helping churches and doing some stuff like that. So then I decided to do that kind of full time, did some consulting, bunch of different things. And then really just felt like the Lord was kind of calling me back into the local church. And so had an opportunity at Saddleback Church in California, Southern California, and decided that really just through a lot of prayer and listening to the vision of the people, the leaders there, and Andy and Stacy, our new senior pastors here, came down and joined the team at Saddleback about a month ago, and it's been incredible. And so it's kind of a quick snapshot of how I got here today.
Yeah, no, that's great. We've been kind of following the journey in Saddleback for a while, and it's been interesting to see what's happening there. A lot of fresh faces on the team at Saddleback, and you are one of them. So glad that you landed in a great spot, a great church, and obviously with what Pastor Andy is bringing in with new vision or at least clarifying vision in the church and moving things forward there. Sounds like a very exciting time to be part of Saddleback. Now, tell us a little bit. I mean, you've been there for a month. I'm sure to a great degree, you're just still kind of trying to get the lay of the land in terms of figuring out who's who, big staff. You make everybody wear name tags so that you know who's who all the time. Tell us a little bit about your role at Saddleback, and maybe not necessarily what you're doing with all your time today, but what specifically is your role at Saddleback in terms of what you're overseeing and what you hope to accomplish there as a church?
Yeah, so I'm leading the communications team. So we're covering everything from all the marketing and social media things, a lot of the digital strategy. We have an incredible web team and IT team that we work so closely with, kind of leading that digital space. We're able to be a part of the weekend services by just contributing a lot of branding and things like that. Typical things that most church communications teams are involved in. And Bart, when I got here, one of the great things is there's already an incredible team that I get to lead. And, they even spoke. So I know they've worked with you guys at Missional Marketing a lot, and you guys have been able to partner with them and help. And so we're grateful for that. But yeah, we're just really kind of like everybody figuring out this post-pandemic. What does that mean? How do we grow? I mean, we hear all the time, just all the new things that are happening and how can we reach people digitally and all that. So I think we're all just kind of navigating this space together.
Yeah. So what did you study in college when you were a
My degree, my undergrad degree is in education. I was a world geography teacher, right. And then my master's degree is in sports administration because I thought I wanted to be an athletic director one day. So nothing to do with leading a church comms team.
No, absolutely not. And like you said, I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast can relate to that. You've had to learn a lot, like in the trenches, just trial and error, doing things. You said that you had a pastor who invited you into taking on church communications really for the first time, the marketing creative side of things. What were some of the things that you did on those early days to learn, to figure out what you needed to do and how to be a church communications director? What can you remember that far back? I mean, it really wasn't really that long ago.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, one of the great things is I was able to lead a good team. So we had some good people on the team, and our pastor told me, he said, Sallie, and I told him, I said, I have no clue about this stuff. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, I'm a learner, I'm a reader, I can research it. And he said, Sallie, this team doesn't need you to be the expert and all that. We just need you to be a coach and rally the troops. And kind of there's volunteers in our church who understand this stuff better than we do. There's staff that already, young people on staff. And so what I did really, honestly, Bart, when I first took over, meet with all the people involved and really just try to get a good lay of the land of like, what are we doing? What is our team involved in? What have we learned? What are the problems we need to solve? And then the part I tried to play was really just, I got on the phone and probably within that first month, I had probably talked to 30 to 40 church communication leaders from all over. I mean, the lady who connected us, she was one of my calls the first time, Katie offered, like all these people I called churches. I got on the internet, joined every single Facebook group with this. I went on Instagram and followed all these, church communication groups and just ideas. And so spent a lot of time just learning and just asking, okay, what book should I be reading? What podcast should I be listening to? But honestly, it was a lot of learning. And it's the same thing when I stepped into coaching college basketball. Sure, basketball's the same, but when you coach high school, there's no recruiting. So when I stepped into college, I had to learn how to recruit. That's a whole different aspect of coach. They don't teach you that in college, So I think it's this too. It was just, for me, it was just learning. I didn't know what I was doing. So, that would be my encouragement to anyone stepping into this role is there's a lot of great people out there who want to help, and you just have to pick up the phone. And sometimes you think, oh, they'll never have time for me, or, they're doing all these cool things. They will, like, just pick up the phone and call. And to this day, Bart, honestly, some of my greatest relationships in ministry come from that time when I first got started, and I went to them and said, I'm clueless and I need help. And they were willing to help me. So,
yeah, I think a great deal of self-awareness, being willing to ask for the help when you need the help that's key. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. I have a point to these questions that I'm going to ask. So just humor me here for a minute. Okay. Sallie, are you a graphic designer?
No.
Sallie, are you a videographer?
No.
Are you a photographer?
Nope.
Are you an expert in After Effects or InDesign?
Nope. What's that? No, I'm kidding. I know what that is, but I know what it is, but I don't know how to work it.
So I'm asking these questions because I have conversations often with pastors who are looking for a communications director, and those are the skill sets that they're looking for. And so I want you to talk a little bit about what you think the key skills, talents, and abilities are for a successful
communications director. If it's not graphic design and it's not copywriting and it's not being able to do wizard, video editing and After Effects, what are the skills that make an effective communications director?
Yeah, Bart, that's a great question. I feel like I have those conversations too. And what I always try to encourage pastors and leaders in churches is look for leaders. Leaders are people who have an ability to see a future that has not come to pass yet, but it is possible. It's showing people a vision for a team or for themselves that they can't see. And so if you've got this amazing graphic designer, they still need someone to lead them into a new place. And I think so often we do this in the church is someone's a great singer and we go, you're the worship pastor. And, God maybe wired them and gave them great gifts and skills to be a singer or a graphic designer or a video guy, but God maybe didn't give them those skills to lead those people. And I think there's that's the biggest gap. And so what I would tell pastors as they're searching for communications directors, look for people who have an ability to bring people together. The thing I love the most about working on a communications team as a church is we get to be a part of every single ministry, every single campus. There's nothing our church does that doesn't go through social media or graphics or webs or videos or things like that. So we get to be a part of all that. So as you're looking for a leader, you need someone that can bring all those things together. And so I think that's an ability to bring people together is so important. Someone who understands that the job is, I don't know how to do graphics. I don't know how to do video. So number one, that helps me not be a micromanager, and it helps me to trust the people that I'm leading, because there's nothing more frustrating for a creative than when someone's constantly saying, change that to green, change that to blue. Oh, change that font. Oh, that song, not good song for the video, all that. And there are times that I speak into that, but it's from a vision standpoint. And it's from hey, this is the direction our church is going. You have an opportunity to be a part of that. I think that maybe this look or feel is something we're going for. So I think those are the biggest things, an ability to, and also something that's so important is just an ability to care for people and see more in people than they see for themselves, and an ability to take them on a leadership journey, a spiritual journey.
That's very well said. I like where you really emphasized, which was a great communications director is somebody who's going to bring people together. I always emphasize the fact that a great communications director is not necessarily the person who gets the job done, but makes sure that the job gets done.
That's right.
And so, and a big part of that is building team and working through people who have the gifts and the abilities and the skills on the technical side of things and creative, right? It's both technical and creative.
I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. It's always our goal to help you as a church leader leverage your communications and digital media resources to reach more people for Jesus. One of the ways that we help churches do that is through creating social media content from your Sunday sermon videos. Specifically, what we can do for you is to create short sermon snippets from 30 seconds long to 5 minutes long, capturing those mic drop moments that you really want people to remember. We edit the videos, add captions, add your church branding, and then you or we post them to your social media channels. As a pastor, I always love to see my sermon content live on beyond the Sundays, and I know that's what you value for your sermons too. We offer this service as a monthly subscription, but we've got a 6-week trial that gives you a chance to see how it works. If you'd like more information, just shoot me an email at bblair@missionalmarketing.com. I'd be glad to meet with you, explain the process, and answer any questions that you have. Once again, thanks for tuning into our podcast. Let's get back to the interview.
Let's dive into that just a little bit further. Obviously, at Saddleback, you've walked into a team that, a great deal of staff, people who are paid to do a lot of these jobs. Not every church has the ability to staff all of those specific roles. So a communications director who's trying to pull people together is often having to do so with volunteers. How would you coach a communications director who is trying to build out a robust communications team made up primarily of volunteers in the church?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think no matter how big your staff is, I've been at smaller churches, at a bigger church now, and I've worked with smaller churches, medium-sized churches. None of it's possible without volunteers. And when we try to staff those positions instead of using volunteers, we are taking away opportunities of God has given these people inside of your church skill sets and giftings. And so when you hire for that, instead of relying on the volunteers, oftentimes we're hurting those people in our church. And so that would be my first encouragement is every skill set your church needs is sitting in those pews. Your job as the leader is to go find those and equip them for the ministry. That's Ephesians 4 model, right? We equip the saints for the ministry of the church. And so I think, the church, the leaders of the church, your job, if you're the church staff comms director, you're the administrator of the ministry, but it's the people in your church who do the ministry. And so I think number one, being a good recruiter. I mean, on Sundays, don't stick yourself in that booth. Don't stick yourself backstage in the green room. Be in the lobby, constantly looking for people, meeting people, having conversations every single week. I try to have coffee with at least a couple of people who just I meet on a Sunday in the lobby or whatever. And whether they can ever join our comms volunteer team or not, it's not the point. But oftentimes God, when you really pray and ask the Holy Spirit to lead you to those people, oftentimes God will intersect your paths. Or they may know someone. Oh my gosh, my son is a photographer. Hey, give me his number. I'd love to connect with him. So I think that's the biggest thing is being a human, like getting those human connections, and then and then treating those and caring for those volunteers, treating them like staff. People want to be held to a standard. So give them a schedule, give them podcasts and videos, and go, hey, we're not always trying to get something from you. We want something for you. We want to help equip you to become a better better photographer, videographer, singer, whatever it is that we're asking them to do. Just a real practical thing is anybody under the age of 20 can do any of the skills your team is doing probably better than you can. Like that's just they're digital natives. They understand all of that. So I would recruit. I mean, when I'm always try to stay involved in our student ministry and our next gen ministry. Number one, because that's important to me, but number two, because that's a great connection for a comms team, because oftentimes those students are looking for places to serve, and that's a great place because they have great information. And being okay with, everything doesn't have to be produced and polished. Like I tell churches all the time, the best best investment your church can make is these iPhones, or Android, whatever you have. I mean, the horsepower in this camera right here is more horsepower that launched some of the very first space shuttles that NASA launched. I mean, think about it. Some of those very first huge computers are right here in your cell phone. So don't be afraid, churches, to use that to capture video, to capture graphics, things like that.
I'm going to go on a limb and just say a month ago, Sallie had no idea that this podcast existed, and I did not pay her to say any of these things. But you are reading my mail, lady. You are reading my mail.
That's
These are
awesome.
The same things we've been saying over and over again. I think that you're right. We often, when we feel like we have to be the doers of everything or we have to staff everything, we hide or we take away opportunities that people have to actually use the gifts and the talents that God has given them. And I think too, you never hire, I don't know any pastor who would ever hire a children's ministry director and expect that children's ministry director to teach all the Sunday school classes.
That's
no,
right.
You actually expect them to build a team. You hire a worship leader, you don't expect that person to play all the instruments and sing all the parts. You expect that person to build and recruit a team. And I think that this has been a missing link in the communication space in churches, is that we hire a communication director and we're looking to hire someone who can do all the job rather than hiring someone who has the ability to identify gifts and talents in others and empower them, equip them, and help them learn how to leverage who God has made them to be to help the church accomplish His mission. So I really appreciate that about you. Now, obviously, recruiting and managing volunteers, especially when you're talking about some of this creative and technical, these technical skill sets, it's not always a level playing field. Some are more difficult than others. What are some of the like the low hanging fruit in terms of finding volunteers for a comms team versus some of the things that might be a little bit more complex to find volunteers to do? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things is we talk so much about social media. I mean, that's what I would be recruiting for right now. And I mean, that's like getting people who are willing on a Sunday to go around and whether it's a quick little 30-second video with the pastor after he preaches his message backstage and going, hey, we're going to ask you to do this every single Sunday. Can you do this? Can you, follow him or not? Maybe that's not a good example. If it's, hey, on a Sunday, we need you to get these 5 pictures of whatever, the kids ministry, whatever. To me, social media is such a low hanging fruit because all you need is the cell phone. And I mean, there's so many free apps you can use if you want to even make it better than really the phone is good enough, but there's so many things you can do. And even photography. I mean, so many people dabble in photography as side hustles or whatever. And so many of those people, they don't even know that they can use those gifts in the church. So, I mean, I would say that's a huge one. Obviously it's going to be a little tougher to get someone to be an official videographer for your church from the volunteer team, but they're out there. And I think something else too is even graphic design. I think if your church can figure out and lay out some things that you have upcoming and really plan, you have a better better chance to use volunteers because you can say, hey, we need this, but you have a month to work on it. Work on it in your own time. The problem comes in when, it's Thursday, you can't call a volunteer and say, hey, we need that screen graphic tomorrow. So any long-term projects, or if you're the comms director at a church and you only have 4 staff members, maybe it's you, the kids pastor, youth pastor, and the lead pastor, and the kids pastor's like, I've always had this dream of repainting our room. And you go, man, we don't have the team. If you have someone on your volunteer team that can paint, assign them a project like that where there's no time limit and there's no the kids pastor's just so happy to have that. They're not going like, oh, they didn't do a good job. Like it's not professional enough. They're so thankful for it. But again, it comes back to those conversations and really just finding out what people's gifts are and utilizing those.
You hit on a pain point there that I want to get you to elaborate on a little bit. We just had recently Jenny Catron on the podcast. I don't know if you know Jenny, but Jenny she's a leader of leaders, and we had her talking specifically to our audience about how to lead up, how to lead their leaders, or at least build the kind of relationship with their leaders that their leaders truly understand what they need and how that relationship can help them do better in their role as a comms director. You said sometimes you don't have enough time, or sometimes you have more time. Time is one of the pain points that I think a lot of comms directors feel, especially as it relates to the planning of their senior leaders. As a church communications director, if you're sitting in a chair where you could use more volunteers, you could execute better on the things that you're being asked to execute on, if you had more time, how do you have those conversations with your senior leadership team? How do you tell them, hey, it would be real. I work with one guy at a church who literally says sometimes his pastor doesn't give a sermon title until Friday before the Sunday, right? So if they ever wanted to print a bulletin, I don't think they do that anymore, but if they ever did, they would always have to have title to be determined because they're printing it on Thursday before everybody goes home and takes the day off on Friday, right? Yeah. How do you lead up? What kind of conversations do you have? Have you had to navigate that in the past? And if so, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bart. I think, first of all, a great resource I would direct people to. One of my friends, Clay Scroggins, wrote a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. Great book. And that it has a lot of those principles in there. But just on a practical level, what I've seen and what I've always tried to do is, number one, as the comms director, I'll never understand the weight that our lead pastor carries, ever. No matter how many emails I think I have to do or print, I'll never understand the weight. So I think number one, holding that with grace and understanding, I don't understand what he's carrying. And so my job is to make his load lighter, not make it heavier. And so how do I make his load lighter is I'm thinking through the things that maybe he hasn't thought of. I don't think there's many pastors who, if they do things last minute, it's not because they're trying to hurt their comms director. It's just they were doing so many other things and finally got the opportunity to go, oh, we could do this. And so as a leader, I'm always trying to think ahead for my pastor and get stuff in front of him before he has to think of it. He's making hundreds of decisions every day. So if I can get something to him and go, hey, I know you probably haven't thought about Father's Day yet, but our team kind of put together this plan of this is what we're thinking branding and service wise. Do you have any feedback before we move forward? And you can do this in March, April, whenever you have time. And your pastor, first of all, will thank you. And then now you're putting it on their radar. In that moment, you give him a chance to give you feedback. You give him, you're putting on his plate, because he won't think about it till Father's Day because he's thinking about all the other things. So when you put it in front of him, now he thinks about it in that moment. You get his feedback and your team can begin moving forward. And you try to eliminate decisions for him. Like if you, instead of, and don't give him 20 choices, go, hey, do you like this one or this one? Or this is, hey, and the more you, my senior pastor at our church in Louisiana was amazing at, he always, the Lord, and all pastors are like this, but when the Lord would speak to him about something of like, man, God is really putting something about prayer on my heart, I would always go, that's awesome. Now I can take that to my team and let them start and go, hey, he's thinking about prayer. How do we support that? And we might have someone go, hey, what if we started a prayer initiative where every day at 7:14 p.m. we pray 2 Chronicles 7:14. That's something we did one time. Hey, we send out an email devotional every morning at 7:14 to remind people to pray. And then you're able to go back to that senior pastor and go, you felt this on your heart. We wanted to come alongside of you to do that. And so number one, you're supporting his vision. But number two is you're gaining influence with that pastor by going, oh, wow, they care about what I care about. Because at the end of the day, God is going to give that pastor vision for the church. He's not going to give Sallie vision for the church. He's going to give that pastor vision for the church. And then it's Sallie and the comms job to come up alongside of that pastor and support the vision that God gave. Just as God's going to give Moses the dimensions, then it was everybody else's job to kind of color in the box. And so God's going to give your pastor dimensions, and then you start coloring in the box.
I love that. That is very, very great counsel, and obviously coming from someone who's done it before. So it's tried and tested, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. If we need to edit this out, we can, but it's April at the time that you and I are recording this, just a few weeks after Easter. Are you guys planning Christmas at Saddleback yet? Have you had any Christmas meetings? You have any on the calendar?
You know what? Our team is amazing, and I haven't heard anything, but I would bet you that, yes, they have probably already started thinking about it and meeting about it. So
okay. I'm only bringing up the question because I want those of our friends who are listening or watching this podcast to look at their calendars and make sure that they've got a Christmas planning meeting on it sometime in the next month or two. You can't start planning Christmas too early. Most of you probably will wait way too late, but it's not my fault if you do, because you heard it here first. Start planning your Christmas.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Sallie, I mentioned a few minutes ago that a month ago you didn't know that this podcast existed. Katie Allred connected us, and I started kind of doing my homework. And who is this Sallie lady? And I discovered that you actually you have a book available that you put together for churches, specifically on YouTube and YouTube strategy. Share a little bit with us about the book, why you wrote it, who it's designed to help, and how people can get it.
Yeah, Bart. So when I finished my time in New York at Times Square Church, I kind of was consulting and working with some different churches. And I found that these churches, a lot of them, or like churches we were just talking about, maybe don't have a full staff and they're relying on volunteers. And they would say, how do we improve our digital strategy? How do we reach more people? And I'm going, there's this amazing free resource called YouTube. And they're like, oh, we can't use that. And the more we would sit, I'd go, yes, you can. Like there's some little practical things that you can do for no budget, little budget, no staff, little staff. And so as I'm talking to these churches, I really felt like, man, I want to help people. And I want to kind of do the work and the research to put together some resources for people. And so that's why I even wrote this book kind of in an ebook format, because I have over 100 different links in there. So if you can click on the link and go, well, I don't know how to make a video for free. I have a link to make free videos that you can send to that volunteer in the youth ministry and go, make a video on baptism, and you go, we don't know how to make a thumbnail on YouTube. Hey, here's a link, make a free one. Or I don't know how to do this. Or I don't even know. I have a list of 100 different videos that you can even make of how to tell someone's story, how to share a story of life change, and really just wanted to create just an easy resource for people who maybe don't have the time to go read and learn all this stuff and go, hey, you have some resources available to you for free or low cost that really not only are easy for you to do, but can really make a difference in the kingdom and really, really, really reach more people for Jesus. So that's kind of the genesis of why I wrote that book.
Yeah, I have read it digital cover to digital cover. It is a how-to. It is YouTube 101. I just literally had a call with a church yesterday who I've been meeting with for the better part of the last couple of years. And every time we look at their website analytics and their social media data, I'm like, you guys aren't doing anything on YouTube. You really need to be using YouTube. And they finally, in a call yesterday, they said, we're finally starting to use YouTube. Now, what are we supposed to do? And I'm like, guess what? Guess what? Here's a book that you can actually download, and awesome. It'll walk you through basic step by step, one at a time, things to do. And you've got the book laid out in a way that if I already know how to do these 3 or 4 things, I can still kind of skip around and find other things. And of course, the link to all of the live videos from the digital book makes it a really handy tool. So it's available on Amazon. That's where I got it. Anywhere else, or is that the primary place?
Yeah, you can get on Amazon. You can get on my website. I don't know if we can put that in the show notes. And Bart, if you want, if people type in the code missional, you can get the book for $10. I'll give you guys, there's a discount code I put in for you and all I know you guys serve churches so much, and I didn't write the book to make money. So if you need me to send you the book, if you don't have the $10, shoot me an email. I'll hook you up. And really, that's my heart is I want to provide a resource that can really help churches share Jesus on the internet, on the web, and really just let us all be a part of that great mission.
That's awesome. Thanks for your generosity there, Sallie. We will definitely link to that in the show notes. The code for the discount is missional. And you mentioned your website. People want to learn more about you, some of the things that you do with churches. I don't know, in your new role at Saddleback, how much bandwidth you have outside of what you're doing at Saddleback. But hey, somebody wants to connect with you. What's the best place to do that?
Yeah, definitely the best place. You can find me on my website, and even in the book, I have my cell number, email address, and I would love to just help call. I want to help people. So, and I don't write as much now, and I feel like I'm busy, but I try to write, and just anything that I'm learning, I want to share with other people. And so I'll put all that stuff on there. So hopefully churches and leaders can learn from some of the things that I'm learning from.
And that's SallieGuillory.com. Is that correct?
That's it.
Which is probably not going to be spelled the way you think it's spelled. So make sure you check the show notes. We'll put it in the YouTube notes. We'll put it on our website. Yeah. It's probably not spelled the way that you think it's spelled. I don't know how great your SEO is. Like you butcher his last name, and you'll still get there. But Kerry Hoff, man, he's probably paid a lot of money to make sure that has happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if we butcher your name.
Last name will come up.
Yeah. Hey, Sallie, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Congratulations on your new role, your new opportunity there at Saddleback. And we're just trusting that God will bless you and your team and the whole church as you guys are continuing to expand his kingdom around the world.
Yeah, thank you, Bart. And thank you for you and your team and all that you're doing to help churches. At the end of the day, we're all doing this together for the kingdom. So I'm grateful for that we get to do this together.